With us now on Mix Mornings is Tim Boatswain. Tim is the president of St Albans Civic Society. Good morning, Tim.
Hello, Nick.
Now, we're going to be talking about a number of things, some planning applications and so on, but let's start with local elections coming up.
Yes, the local elections, 2nd of May coming up, and 21 ward seats up out of the 56, so will be quite interesting. Not enough to change the administration, but could change its complexion.
A sizable chunk. And also the Police and Crime Commissioner.
Yes, that's an interesting one, isn't it? Doesn't get much publicity, but yes, the present one, Mr. Lloyd, is retiring, and there'll be a new Police and Crime Commissioner.
Right, well, we shall watch this space. May the 2nd is the date of the local elections. Now, Chiswell Green, so news on quite a large development on the Green Belt.
Yes, it's bad news for Keep Chiswell Green, their campaign, in that the developer went to appeal and the inspector has found in favour of the developer, and that has now been endorsed by the Ministry for Levelling Up. The Housing Minister, Buchanan, has agreed with the inspector's opinion that the houses should go ahead, and that'll be 721 new homes. Quite sizable development.
Yeah, that is quite a sizable development. And is that the end of the road for the campaigners in Keep Chiswell Green?
I'm not sure what their next move will be. And the development is two sides of Chiswell Green, north and south, so it's roughly split between those two. Certainly they have campaigned very hard to keep Chiswell Green green, and I think the main controversial issue here is it is Greenbelt land, and Michael Gove did put out a statement in supporting and preventing building on Greenbelt land, but that seems to be overruled. And again, the district is in trouble because it hasn't got a local plan, and that is why the Greenbelt has not been protected in this area. The need for housing seems to have trumped the Greenbelt, protection of the Greenbelt, and that's partly because we haven't got a plan for housing which will deliver. At the moment, we've only got enough housing earmarked for 2 years, and really you should have it earmarked for 5 years.
Right, and that's the idea behind now trying to get a local plan that actually gets through, but that can't save any of these, presumably, because they're already approved.
That's right, and I think the campaigners would say anyway that there's too much green belt in the proposed new plan, so St Albans will lose quite a bit of green belt.
Right. So even with the proposal on the new local plan, some of the sites for housing are green belt as they stand.
That's correct.
Okay, and what's happening on Harpenden Road now? That was another big development we've been talking about.
Yes, the Carla, who are also involved with the housing in Chiswell Green, are now taken over that site. You remember it's south of Woolham's playing fields, and it's east of the houses along Harpenden Road, and Carl have taken that over. So there's still a battle being fought by the organisation called Clash, who are trying to stop the north of St Albans, the green belt being built on.
Okay, all right. Now, moving on to something else, really, water quality. What do we know about the River Ver in terms of these sewage spills that we've been hearing about in the national news lately?
Well, it's been pretty disastrous, hasn't it, all over the country. And because we've had excessive amounts of water, there have been overflows into all the rivers. The River Lee, for example, is mentioned as being very polluted by a study. And I think the Ver Society, the try and care for the River Ver, also are very worried about the level of pollution there.
Right, okay, well, we'll keep an eye on that one too. With us is Tim Boatswain. Tim is president of St Albans Civic Society. When we come back, we'll be talking about some planning possibilities on Catherine Street in St Albans and elsewhere in St Albans, what's happening on planning developments. And we'll be hearing about the blue plaques. We'll be back with Tim shortly. Civic Society this morning. Now, Tim, blue plaques, something very close to your heart, I know. What's the latest news on getting blue plaques up in the city centre?
Right, well, we've got 11 up, and we're going for the 12th one now.
Right.
And this is to someone called Thomas Kitchin. But before I talk about that, let me just mention we did put a plaque up some time ago to Frederick Sander, the Orchid King,
yes,
who had his retail shop down George Street, and there's a plaque there now which is looking rather good, I think. Actually, it's on the outside of the hairdresser's shop there.
Right.
Anyway, his great-grandson, Peter Sander, is going to give a talk about his grandfather on the 13th of April, a Saturday, at 1 p.m. in the cathedral itself, in the Lady Chapel. Right. And the reason it's in the Lady Chapel is that when Lord Grimthorpe, you may remember the great saviour of the Abbey Church, turning it into a cathedral and so on, when he restored the cathedral, he also got his sculptor, master stonemason Baker, to produce some of his orchids. So when you go in the Lady Chapel, it's wonderful floral frieze. They're three of Frederick Sander's orchids there. And I have to say, the plug for the cathedral have been brilliant and are allowing us to use the Lady Chapel for Peter's talk, and all the fees that are being charged will go to put up more blue plaques. So if you're around and you'd like to join, just go on the cathedral website, stalbanscathedral.org, look at the events there, and book yourself a seat in the Lady Chapel.
And that's 13th of April, right?
Yes.
Excellent.
1 p.m.
And you've got another blue plaque coming up for Thomas Kitchin, as you said.
So going back to Thomas Kitchin, we've got another plaque coming up for him. That'll be in Fishball Street. And so we go on. That'll be our 12th.
Yeah.
And we're now talking about when we can put some work in, putting a blue plaques trail together. So you'll be able to follow it, probably initially on the internet, but then presumably we'll be able to produce a leaflet, and you can walk your way around the blue plaques.
Yeah, that would be great. We'll look forward to that as well. Now, on Catherine Street, Cooper's, the old garage, that's all changing.
Yes, that's interesting, isn't it? And McCarthy Stone are putting forward plans for a people's home there, elderly home. I think there'll be independent apartments. I think they're talking about 42 different apartments, and at the moment they've got a sort of tentative plan out, and they're consulting with the locals about this plan and what people think of it. So it'll be very interesting. I mean, it's I think good to have the idea of people's home in the elderly people's home in the city centre. I've always worried about having these homes on the outskirts. How elderly people are supposed to walk into the centre is always tricky. But of course, it'll be controversial because of its design, etc., etc.
Yeah, and full disclosure, McCarthy Stone, of course, supporters of ours, sponsors of Mix Afternoons. Some more houses planned, King Offa and Batchwood.
Oh, this is, of course, the council who own those areas, and you may remember it was rather, particularly with the King Offa site, they started work with Jarvis, and Jarvis, unfortunately, their builders went bankrupt, out of business, and now they've now got a new building company, and they're investing to build, I think, 14 homes on that site, and Batchwood, 12 homes on the Hedges, if people know where that is, in Batchwood.
So 26 much-needed new council homes eventually coming our way, I guess.
Yes, I mean, we do need more housing. We do have a housing crisis.
Yeah. And finally, in St Albans, something odd happening on the Verulam estate, right?
Oh, yes. This is not a good story for the people in Verulam estate. When the estate was built, there were patches of land, usually on the end of roads and lanes, which were kept as green spaces. Right. What the people moving to Verulam estate didn't understand was that these were still held by the developer, and the developer auctioned them off, and now they're being bought up for development. And there's one that made the news recently, which is quite interesting. It's on the by where Widridge Close meets Westfield, and there's a corner of land there, and it's been fenced off by a developer, St Albans developer, Ukings Properties, and they did it without planning permission. So they went to the council to get retrospective, and the council has turned them down. And now they've gone to appeal. And the locals are, I think, partly bemused, but also very angry, because the claim that the fence is harmonious and actually will prevent fly tipping, etc., has gone down very, very badly. So the arguments they're putting forward seem to be very shallow.
Right, but on the other hand, when they get round to applying for planning permission for actual homes, one assumes that it's going to be difficult to object.
Well, the way the wind is blowing, we've seen that, and St Albans, we've been in trouble. Our planning department is in trouble. We talked about that our last time we had a chat. The wind is blowing in the direction of homes trumping everything. Yes.
Yeah. Tim, thank you so much for joining us. That's Tim Boatswain. Tim is president of St Albans Civic Society. Tim's with us every month here on Mix Morning.